Hello. Namaste. It's always a task to start a session immediately after lunch because everybody is in a siesta mood. But so we'll try to make this session interactive and stormy enough that everybody will feel like waking up. So the discussion is on a very interesting topic, understanding wokeism and the threat that it holds for the future of Bharat. And it is something that concerns all of us. To discuss this topic, we have two extremely erudite speakers who are writers in their own, very successful writers. And interestingly, I have launched both their books in different cities. So she has already introduced both the speakers, but I'll add something. So Abhijit has written his first book, Unmasking the Lies That We Have Been Fed in Indian History. And what is remarkable about his book is that it's a continuous narrative, and he starts with the biggest lie that we've been fed, that is the so-called Aryan invasion theory, and goes all the way to India's freedom struggle and how we have been told that only non-violence, charkha and satyagraha got us our freedom. It's a book that's been translated in English as well and doing very well. And his latest book, this one, Davi Valvi, Termites, it's called, and it talks about the left movement in the world. And he has gone through a lot of research, and he has started with the historical context, how the left ideology came into being, how the left is inherently inimical to the concept of nationalism, and it ends with wokeism and how wokeism is a threat to any established society. And on my other side, we have Dr. Amit Thadhani, who writes with the same clinical precision with which he does his surgeries. So, his book is called Rationalist Murders. It's a very interestingly written book. And it's a book about how the so-called four murders of rationalists, starting with Narendra Dabholkar, Gauri Lankesh, Kalburgi, and somebody else, right? Pansare. So how these four murders were randomly linked by the administration, by the people who wanted to create a narrative that right-wing nationalist forces are responsible for it. And it is a classic case of first you come to a conclusion and then work backwards and build an entire fake investigation based around it. If you read the book, you will get to know it. The book is available outside. Amit will autograph it for you. But it's a book that's a must read. So how we'll go about it is, I will give both these erudite speakers 10 minutes to make their opening statements. And after that, we'll have a discussion. I'll ask a few questions, you ask a few questions, and that's how we'll go about it. So over to you, Abhijit.
Thank you very much, Shefali. And first of all, let me compliment the organizers, Jagannathan and his team, for a wonderful arrangement and the content of this event. Again, to Shefali, because she has been planning the entire event. Coming to wokeism, we generally feel, this is a word which has come up recently, and we feel that this is something which is some kind of a new fad or something like that. But it is nothing of that sort. It goes back a long way to the 1920s. We all are aware that Marx had said that the communist revolution will happen in the industrialized nations like England and Germany mainly. But it didn't happen there. It happened in Russia, which was a feudal country. And then it went on happening in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, where industrialization had not reached at all. So Marx was proved wrong completely. So the period between two world wars, First World War and Second World War, was a period of great ideological confusion for communists, because they didn't understand that how Marx could go wrong and why the West, which was primarily to be the target of revolution, stayed away from it. And they never pardoned the West for this, and they then tried to find out how to break this citadel of Western civilization. And in that churning of ideology, Antonio Gramsci, who was the president of Italian Communist Party, came up with a theory that in Western countries, and democracies, why workers are not willing to join the revolution. In fact, they are very patriotic. They fought 2 wars for their countries. They loved their countries. So this was a big challenge for them. Because in communism, there is love for your country is absolutely a no-no. You have to be an internationalist. And completely opposite things were happening. So they tried to find out, and they came up with a theory that these people love their countries because the mainstream culture of these countries has been so created that all the citizens feel involved in that culture. So culture is a weapon of exploitation. That was the theory. And then they said that we will have to break this culture. And Gramsci was the one, and then there was a group of scholars from Frankfurt School. They were called, from Frankfurt University, they were called as Frankfurt School. And these people were, when Hitler came into power, he threw them out of the country. They went to Geneva for some time, and then they came to Columbia University in the United States and settled there. And then they slowly took control of all the universities in the United States. So what was the logic, or what was the strategy of these people? Antonio Gramsci called it long march through the institutions. So he said that all these institutions which make, cultural institutions which make these countries strong, like first is the institution of family, second is religion, third is education, fourth is democracy. All these institutions have to be demolished from inside. So he said that the revolution will not happen in a bloody manner. It will happen over a period of time by slowly subverting these institutions from inside. So I'll just quickly read a couple of things which... So Gramsci says, socialism will triumph by first capturing the culture via infiltration of schools, universities, churches, and the media by transforming the consciousness of society. So it is a plan, it is a long-term strategy which they have prepared. It's not happening automatically. I'll just quickly read 2 more things. The second one is by a scholar called Max Horkheimer. He says the revolution won't happen with guns. Rather, it will happen incrementally, year by year, generation by generation. We will gradually infiltrate their education institutions and their political offices, transforming them slowly into Marxist entities. So just imagine how deeply they have thought and how well they have prepared for a long-term destruction of Western civilization. And then the third one is very succinct and very dangerous. A person called Willy Munzenberg, he says, we must make the West so corrupt that it stinks. We must organize the intellectuals and use them to make Western civilization stink. So that was the kind of ideology they had, and that is the kind of preparation they made. And then slowly, steadily, but surely, they completely subverted all these institutions, primarily first starting with America, because as I said, these people had gone to Columbia University and then they took charge of all the universities there. So they became their dens. And first, destroying the family institution. So they had many strategies for that. One was extreme individualism, which was also shared by the capitalists. There are many reasons. Both had different reasons for it, but they did that. Then free sex. And for all these things, they have given ideological explanation. It's not just, they are not saying that just have sex. They are saying that it is important and it is necessary and that is how it should be. So it is ideologically, morally, and ethically also, you should have free sex. It's something that is the expertise of the West, that for everything, they will give a moral explanation. So free sex was another one. Then you had the most dangerous. Another one was perverted definition of women's lib, or originally the movement started with very valid reasons and very justified reasons. But that is the normal practice of the left, that they jump into movements and they give it a completely different turn. So similarly, they have a completely different turn to the feminist movement in the USA also. And the last and the most dangerous trick that they played for destroying the family was transgenderism. Transgenderism is something that they say that man and woman or male and female are not biological realities. But your gender is given to you at the birth by the society. So it's a cultural construct, is something that they say. And they believe that, or at least they claim that a person knows whether the gender given to him is really something he wants or not, he or she wants or not. They come to know at the age of 3. So they started teaching all these things to the school students, primary school students. And they encourage them to find out whether whether a boy wants to be a boy or whether a girl wants to be a girl. And it has led to such a horrible situation now that if a person in the morning says that I am a man, in the evening he is allowed to say that no, now I feel I am a woman. So by controlling the language, they have made it almost impossible to oppose these obviously horrible and completely wrong things. So that is the trick they have played. And now, like Willy Manzenberg had said, they have really brought the Western civilization to the brink of collapse, and they are making it stink. Like the next phase of this transgenderism is that if you identify yourself as a cat, everybody must respect that. So there was a girl in Australia who said that I'm a cat, and she started walking on all fours and making noises like meow and all those things. And it has to be accepted and respected. I mean, that is the stinking of Western civilization. There are a few students in Australia who said that they made a hole in their uniform so that their tails can come out, because they were identifying themselves as foxes. So, that is the kind of perversion that has been brought into the society. And all these things are done very, very seriously, and it has to be accepted and respected. And this is now one family. Similarly, they have infiltrated into universities, into schools, for example. The entire school education in the United States is completely controlled by the left. And they are so smart that they have written it down. Everything, I'm not saying anything from my hat. Everything is written down. And they have said that how we captured the school education. First, we captured the teachers who teach the teachers. Like we have B.Ed and M.Ed and all that. So they controlled those institutions first. And then over a period of time, as teachers trained by them went out into the schools, they created an education system and students who were completely indoctrinated with the leftist ideology. So today all Americans who are educated, especially in the universities, are all carrying that mindset. And recently you might have heard that in Harvard University there was a poll that asked whether whatever Hamas did, was it justified? And 51% students said that yes, it was justified. So it is so unbelievable, but unfortunately it is true. And all this has been done with a deadly planning. I mean, we all feel that it has just happened. That is their main strength, that people simply don't believe. 100 saal kaun itna, 100 years nobody can plan and work like this with so much. But they are fanatics. Please understand that normal people like you and me can't think of only one thing all the time. But fanatics can think of nothing but whatever they want to achieve. And that is how, thinking like fanatics for 100 years, they have brought Western civilization to a brink of collapse. And now the same thing is happening to India. That is why we are all here and we are talking about this subject, that we have to wake up. America didn't wake up in time, so they are now facing this situation. We should at least wake up and I'll just say one more sentence. Their main idea is to create oppressor-oppressed paradigm in every human interaction. Every human interaction. Earlier, communism was only on economic terms, that rich and poor was the only oppressor-oppressed paradigm. Now they say that every single thing every relationship, every activity has to be seen from the prism of oppressor and oppressed. So parents and their children are also, parents are oppressors and children are oppressed. That is how they, seriously, I mean, that is how they really want you to look at it. And that is how they have brought society to a level of collapse. Because there are people who are all the time at each other's throats. They simply can't live with each other. I mean, there are people in the USA who are saying that, no, we can't live with these people now in the same country. From both the sides. So that is the continuous conflict which they engineer. It doesn't happen automatically, it is engineered. And that brings the society to the level of collapse. Imagine in India, we already have so many fault lines. So if you create more and more fault lines, then what will happen? Because there they have, race is one, sex was another. But they have created many more fault lines. They are saying that tall people are...
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, sorry.
He's absolutely right, essentially. What wokeism does is basically it divides the world into two categories. Either you are a victim, and if you refuse to see yourself as a victim, then you automatically, by default, become the perpetrator or an oppressor. You don't have a choice in that. So either you see yourself as a victim, and how you see yourself as a victim is that they have these certain tropes. I mean, in the West, it's race. In India, it's caste, then gender, then language. But either ways, you either see yourself as a victim or you see yourself as an oppressor. You cannot have any third category. To expound on this subject, and we'll come back to the relevance of wokeism to India and how it is affecting Indian campuses as well. I want Amit also to speak about this, and somehow, I mean, I'm very keen that you talk about your book, where it is basically the oppressor has already been decided. Whether it's a truth or not, in these 4 murders, the system has already decided that it is the Hindutva person who has killed these guys. And then the entire narrative is basically, once you have slotted somebody as an oppressor, then they're just trying to prove that you are an oppressor. So I would like you to talk a little bit about that.
So, very good afternoon. And let me just reiterate what Abhijit ji said, that the aim of leftists is basically to destroy the society completely, format button daba ke usko then make it another kind of society in the model that Karl Marx and Engels wanted, which is basically no right to your own property, no right to your own family, no right to your own money, and everything the state will decide for you. It's the nanny model. And for that, breaking the society first is the first steps which have to be taken. And because of this, in our situation especially, we have plenty of fault lines, but we are a very, very diverse kind of society. So it's a difficult job. So as the infiltration by leftists has been already going on for about 50 years now into all the educational institutions that we have. Now it's not only the lives of these people, the leftists, ideologues, so to speak, which are used for the purpose of destruction of the society and creating this narrative of oppressor-oppressed. Even their deaths are used for the same purpose very, very remorselessly and mercilessly. And this is where the question comes that how far will these people go in the end? You know, they are very focused on their goals, but are we aware as to how the narratives are being created? Now, let me come to the specific people concerned in this. What sort of people are we talking about? We are talking about a person who was himself a medical doctor, Dr. Narendra Dabholkar, who devoted his entire life to allegedly eradicating superstition from society. What sort of superstition? He will not let people throw rice during weddings because that is wastage of rice. How much rice will you waste? Handful, right? He will say that women in rural areas of Maharashtra are malnourished because they fast. How many times is a woman fasting in a year? Right? This is a person who went to court to fix the height of Ganpati idol during Ganpati festival at 6 inches. We are talking about people doing this not because of anything else, but because he is targeting our society as a whole. He does not want the way the society is to exist as it is. Right? So narratives. You see, even if you look at M.M. Kalburgi, what was the entire structure behind which he worked all his life? To divide Lingayat community from Hindu. that Lingayats are not Hindu. Entire body of his work can be summed up in one line. And for that he was heavily threatened. By whom? By the Lingayats themselves, who didn't want to be divided away from Hindus. And he was actually under police protection for a very long time. And within months of his police protection being withdrawn, he was actually murdered. Now, Dr. Dabholkar was unfortunately shot dead by two unknown people on a bike. Within minutes, the government starts saying, or government of the day starts saying that Godsewadi walon ne mara hai. How do you know? Within minutes, your chief minister is issuing a statement the next day that we are against these forces, he has been killed for his ideas. How do you know? Within minutes. Even the police took half an hour to reach on the scene and you already know who has done the crime. No, that's not how it worked. What happens is, you are working backwards. You have already now identified that these are the people who have done the murders. Now we will try to find out who among them has done. You are not going to look anywhere else because that's none of your business. You don't want to, right? And the same thing has happened with all the 4 murders. And because of this, I don't want anybody to get killed, first of all, for their thoughts. We should defeat them at ideological level. But what happens in these cases is, the more you try to link up these murders together with each other, and the narrative has been so strong because you'll know, Dar Ka Mahal, we all saw what happened during the Dar Ka Mahal narrative where film actors and actresses started saying statements like this. We know what happened with the Kalburgi murder where award wapsi happened with so many people giving up their Padma awards and Sahitya Academy awards and everything. So these are very hot political issues. They weren't just murders, they were utilized for political purposes. And unless a narrative is created, the political purpose is not served. Which is why these murders were linked together. At the same time when these 4 murders were connected, now let me just reiterate, Dabholkar was murdered in 2013. Comrade Pansare, who was a practicing Communist Party politician and no rationalist, was brought into this because he was Dabholkar's friend, right? He was murdered somewhere in the beginning of 2015. He was an active politician, mind you, and he had a lot of things going on at that time. In the latter half of the same year, 2015, Kalburgi was murdered in Bangalore. Not even in the same state, not in the same city. One was in Pune, one was in Kolhapur, one was in Bangalore. And then in 2017, Gauri Lankesh was shot dead. Shortly after she tweeted something like, comrades, we should not fight amongst each other. She was shot dead. And who was blamed? She has been killed for her thoughts. 18 activists, all Hindus, caught, put in the lockup, tortured till they gave some kind of statement. In the Dabholkar case, let me reiterate what happened. On the day he was arrested, 2 other people were arrested in an unrelated case. Murder weapons, the weapons were recovered from them and they were tested in the forensic lab, and Mumbai lab, Kalina lab, gave a report that these look like the weapons from which the bullets have been fired. These 2 people were history sheeters. They were known arms dealers. And they gave statements to the media that Rakesh Maria, who was the ATS chief of Mumbai at that time, has offered us 25 lakhs to take the blame on ourselves. Now, these 2 people were arrested for the murder because their weapons had a match. They were never charge sheeted. Why? Because they didn't belong to any Hindu organization. So in the next year, 2014-15, the case was handed over to the CBI because there were no further breakthroughs. Pune police had prepared 2 sketches of 2 people. The CBI prepares another set of sketches of 2 different people and says we have identified the murderers. Now you tell me, does the face of the murderer change when the investigating agency changes? Because the first set of photographs does not match with the second set of photographs, and allegedly the same witnesses have given evidence, and these photographs are there in my book, you can see them. I have taken the photographs directly from the FIRs and from the charge sheets. They don't match. Not only this, in 2015, you name 2 people as the murderers of Dabholkar. You say these 2 people have committed the murders. You charge sheet them. And you don't have them because those people are already missing since 2009. Right? In 2017, the CBI files a second charge sheet. Now, charge sheet means what? The investigation is complete. We have enough material to go on trial. Okay. 2017, the CBI files a second charge sheet, naming 2 different people. Not the same people. Now, what is your investigation doing here? You are saying that 2 people have committed murder. You know which 2 people they are. You have enough material to go for a trial. And then under the guise of keeping some evidence collection balance, you file a second charge sheet in which you have actually changed the name of the murderers also. You change their faces also. And your witnesses identify these again as the same persons. I mean, just imagine the kind, and when you read the papers, you will say, ha, Akolkar Pawar, ye dono ka naam aaya, ye log ne 3 murder kiya. Where are they? They haven't been seen for the last 14 years. They've been missing. And the reason why they're missing is also there in my book. If you'll see that, it is there. Now, what I'm trying to say is that this is a narrative. Nobody questions as to how murderers can change, as to how murder weapons can change, as to how a murder weapon which has allegedly been dismantled and thrown into the sea and then divers 6 years earlier is retrieved intact by diving. So these are sort of questions which we must ask, you know, because unless you ask these questions, these narratives do not get deconstructed. The moment you start asking questions, acha, that person said he broke the weapon and threw it inside the water. How did you remove an intact weapon? Because he was lying. You all put the words in his mouth. He was tortured into giving that statement. And he has gone on record saying that I'm tortured into giving this statement. Now, let's come back to the topic of wokeism, because this is directly a continuation of this. Now, as I said, these are narratives. And they have to be countered with facts. So unless we know the facts on ground, you know, it's difficult to counter them. And people who have been named as mastermind of the murders, they organized it, they collected the weapons, they, you know what happened last month? The CBI filed a discharge report saying we don't have any evidence against them. That is the power of narrative. That accusations are published on the first page and discharges from court are published in some 13th page corner. Now, a few words about, you know, wokeism per se, which is an extreme form of, you can say, cultural Marxism, where you are hell-bent on breaking every single relationship that a person may have and create a class of oppressed people, each one of whom is calling the other as an oppressor. Now imagine the kind of infighting which will happen in a society if this happens. There are concepts like intersectionality, meaning what happens is, the more number of boxes you tick on the oppressed scale, the more oppressed you are, right? So if you are in the American context, if you are black, if you are disabled, if you are a gay, then you click a lot of boxes and you come into the most oppressed category, irrespective whether you have committed a murder or not. If you committed a murder, see, he was so oppressed, that's why he committed a murder. So this is where we are headed, where everything is linked to an identity. Whether you like that identity or not, it's linked to you, it's stuck on you, and they will decide what that identity is, not you. And the other extreme of it is when it comes to the extreme individualism, where you can decide even whether you're a man or a woman, right? A black person can be called white if he supports another white person. So these are the sort of narratives that we need to counter and we need to deconstruct. Now I'll hand back to Shefali further.
Thank you so much. Actually, if you read the Rationalist Murders, the book actually chills you because it kind of shakes your faith in the investigative systems of this country. It shakes your faith in the judiciary. It's very sinister what is happening, what has been happening in those 4 investigations. And talking about sinister, actually, what is happening right now in Indian campuses particularly is also equally sinister, because while we are talking about building narratives, while we are talking about reclaiming the Indic space, while we are talking about Bharat becoming Vishwaguru, we are losing our children to this disease called wokeism at an alarming rate. And this is happening across the board. I mean, it is happening to children in the US as well, it's happening to children in Europe as well, but it's also started to happen to children in India, which is why some fancy schools in Delhi, they actually got a transgender activist in school to talk to kindergarten children about transgenderism, and they showed a video which was so hideous that a 4-year-old can't just fathom what he's watching. And this is happening right under our eyes, under this guise of raising children to be inclusive. I mean, they have very catchy slogans, that is for sure, you have to give it to them. Now, I want to ask Abhijit, what are the precise threats to Bharat as far as wokeism is concerned? And I'm talking specifically in the Indian context.
They are extending this idea of oppressor-oppressed relationship to India in a very big way. So what is race in the United States becomes caste in India. Whites become upper caste in India. Blacks become Dalits and other Adivasis in India. And their strategy is that these two can never be reconciled. So this oppressor-oppressed idea is not something that the oppression should end. They don't want to flatten this structure, but they want to flip it. So today's oppressor should become tomorrow's oppressed, and today's oppressed should become tomorrow's oppressors. That is, again, they have something that they have written down. So the conflict will always go on, in fact, go on increasing, and the country will always be burning. That is their idea. And in India already there are so many fault lines that if you add more and more, and if you want to inflame them more and more, it's going to be very, very dangerous. Another problem is that we are very happy in copying whatever happens in the West. So we will tend to copy what is happening there. That is why all these things are happening in Delhi schools and all that. They call men dressed as women, who consider themselves as women, they are called as the drag queens. They are wearing small short skirts and false breasts and all that. And they are called to tell stories to the KG children. So it's like a salesmanship of transgenderism. Actually, that is what is happening. And once that happens, it is going to be very, very difficult. If you see the figures of how many people are declaring themselves as transgenders, they're totally shocking. I mean, there are something like 4,000% in some of the cases. And there are many reasons why it happens. One is, like they said that whites or Brahmins are oppressors. And their theory says that any success that you get is always because of your privilege. So either it is because of white privilege or Brahminical privilege. You can't get success because you have merit or because you are hardworking. All these things are out. It's only because of privilege. And if you fail or if you don't get good money and good position and all that, it's only because of the disadvantage of being an oppressed from the oppressed group. So this is an ideology which is going to come to us, it is coming to us. And we are, in fact, only beginning to take our position under the sun. And if at this time, if all these terrible things come into India, and our children are also taught on these lines, it is going to be very, very difficult. And I'll just end by telling you one more thing, that Frankfurt School created a theory called critical theory. And that critical theory has got three components. It's a confluence of three ideologies. One is Marxism, which talks about oppressor-oppressed, so they have picked it up from there. Second is postmodernism, which says that there is nothing like objective reality, or there is nothing like objective truth. It's all subjective, so you can interpret it whatever way you want. That is why if you try to argue with a leftist, you can never win, because he doesn't believe in objective reality. He doesn't believe in facts. They simply don't believe that there is something like truth, facts, right or wrong. These are all things which are meaningless according to them. And that is why it's a very, very difficult battle. And if half of our population from studying in schools and colleges is indoctrinated with these thoughts, it will, I shudder to think how we are going to address those problems.
This reminds me, there is a politician in Maharashtra who recently went on record saying that Shurpanakha has the first right on the city of Nasik, and the city of Nasik should be renamed after Shurpanakha. So this logic was put to me in one of the WhatsApp groups that I was a member of. I said, oh, wonderful. So you want to rename Nasik after a Brahmin princess. Good on you. So then he changed this whole narrative about, no, there is nothing Brahmin about Shurpanakha. I said, she is Ravan's sister. If you want to argue, at least continue that line of argument to its logical conclusion. No, anyway, this is besides the point. My question to Amit is, he has said very beautifully about what is the threat, especially on campuses. So what is it that we can do? And you are a parent of two young kids, kids who are in that age where they can be influenced by wokeism, so am I for that matter. So how do we stop our children from being victims to this oppression Olympics?
Yeah, so as Shefali rightly said, in fact, one of the days I saw my daughter just finished her MBBS and she's no longer small, unfortunately. So when her course was going on, one of the days I saw her listening to a webinar online, and I just asked her, what is this going on? He's saying it's on sex and gender fluidity. And I said, what? I said, okay, let her finish hearing this. And then once she was done with the thing, I said, what did you learn? She's saying, no, but gender is a social construct. I said, you're an MBBS student. It's a biological construct. How is it a social construct? And then, for a while it went back and forth, and then suddenly it hit her, yeah, right, it is biological, it can't be social, right? You're not just a female because someone told you, right? You have a reality, a biological reality which can't be changed. So unless we are observing what our children are learning in there, you will not even come to know what is going on. So the basic thing is that be vigilant. Talk to your kids, always maintain a very, very clean line of communication with your kids so that you always know and they trust you enough to confide in you whatever is going on. No need to get judgmental. Sometimes you get angry, but no need to get judgmental on the things or no need to, get aggressive with that. Otherwise the communication line is shut. Then you will really not come to know what is going on. So maintain very, very good communication lines and keep a close watch on what they are learning in their classes. That is the basic piece of advice. And first of all, we ourselves should know these things. If we only don't know, how we can expect them to know anything? So these are the two things I would like to say in this.
There is a word that's being branded around in India quite a bit these days. It's called Brahminical patriarchy. So I actually saw a photograph where there is a woman in a full head-to-toe burqa, like fully covered, and she's holding a banner saying "Stop Brahminical patriarchy." Now the whole visual didn't make sense to me. What does Brahminical patriarchy have to do with this? And the irony of it is, really tragic. But the point is, how is gender being weaponized in this debate? And little background in this, because you have dealt with the subject at length in this. And what can we do to counter this?
In the Western world, they had very few fault lines. Like one was race. We have so many. Like we have religion, we have caste, we have language. There is no dearth of fault lines in our country. But in the West, they had to invent fault lines. So they invented gender as one fault line. And I was telling you about the three ideologies that combined to form critical theory. One was communism, one was postmodernism, and third was pansexuality or pansexualism. And that says that any kind of normal sexuality is oppressive. Honestly, it really it sounds sounds unbelievable, but they really very seriously argue that if you have a normal sexual leaning, then you are an oppressor. And if you are having transgender or some other kind of sexuality, then you are oppressed. And I was telling you about how the percentage of people who declare themselves as transgender increases. In the schools, they teach the students that white people or Brahmins, for example, are always oppressors. And once you are in that class, you can never get out of it. So you may be very, very progressive in your mind, you may be very, very modern in your thinking, but still, if you are a Brahmin, you will always remain an oppressor. So just imagine a 5-year-old kid or a 6-year-old kid. If he is told continuously that you have been oppressors and you have oppressed all these other people, they feel very depressed. And then they yearn for some kind of a oppressed identity for themselves also. Seriously, that is what happens. I mean, it really sounds very funny, but it really happens. Because you imagine a 6-year-old kid. So he or she said, I also want some oppressed identity. And then the easiest oppressed identity to gain is declare that I am a transgender. Then suddenly you become a hero. Then your friends start looking at you with, oh wow, I mean, because they have made it cool, you know. That is their strength, that they have made these things cool. Becoming a transgender is a cool thing. Becoming a mentally fragile person is a cool thing. So you declare that, I'm having mental issues. Then your friends will say, oh, what a brave person she is. So making people fragile, obesity is cool, exactly. So these new identities they are discovering, that if you are a fit person, you are an oppressor. If you are obese, you are an oppressed. If you are short, you are an oppressed person. If you are a tall and handsome person, you are an oppressor. I'm not joking. This is how it is. They really say these things very seriously and they are taken very seriously. So these are the things which are actually creating all these issues. And what was your question? Yeah. So gender, as I said, that they had very few fault lines, so they created gender as one fault line. And they used it very, very powerfully. And again, they were backed by the ideology of pansexualism. So they built upon it and took gender as one reason why, because of on which the society can be divided. Because ultimately their aim is to divide the society and keep the friction going and keep the temperature rising and finally bring it down. So gender was one of the issues that they created. And they have made it now so watertight that in the United States, if your children are told, school children, that if you want to get a sex change operation done, you don't need your parents' permissions. You don't need a parents' permission. And if parents object, then they can be sued, prosecuted.
Yeah.
Prosecuted.
No, yeah, I just want to add.
That is how they have weaponized gender. And it has gone to such a serious extent that, in India, we have to stop it right here. If you don't take those steps right now, we are in for a great shock. Because today we are laughing, because we think that it's all very laughable. But believe me, it is not laughable. It will make you cry. So we have to stop it right here.
So in medical terms, since it's kind of my subject, there is a very, very small group of male children who identify as female. Since their childhood, they have this feeling that no, behavior patterns, everything. And it's a very, very small group running into maybe a few in a million, okay? And this has been traditionally the group which is eventually who are offered sex change operations. Now, in what is happening in the US is something which is totally the opposite. It's all teenage girls. Okay, why? Because they are at an age when they are vulnerable mentally, and these people are exploiting that to the maximum. And this is where the distortion has crept in, that as Abhijit rightly said, children whom we will never, their consent isn't valid in court, right? We need an adult's consent, are being offered changes which are permanently damaging them permanently damaging them. If they say puberty blockers cannot be reversed. Once puberty is blocked, that child is never going to hit puberty again. It's gone. The child is rendered infertile for life, irrespective of what they do with their genitals later. If they decide it was a mistake, too bad. It's your bad luck. Imagine giving that kind of permanent treatment options in the hands of kids, and the parents aren't supposed to question them. The counselors in the school aren't supposed to question them. If the child comes and says, I feel like a female, the counselor is just supposed to say, yeah, then you must be one, let's get a sex change done. And if the counselor doesn't say that, the counselor gets sacked. Now, these are very serious things. Medically, I will say it's a criminal offense. It's a criminal offense to do any procedure in these children. It's a criminal offense to give them any kind of medicines like this, but it has happened, and so-called progressive countries have done it. We should simply not go down that path at any cost.
In fact, the ultimate frontier of wokeism is basically to normalize pedophilia and say that it's a normal urge among certain individuals to get sexually attracted to children. I cannot think of anything that is more evil or more sinister than this, but that is also probably going to happen first in the Western countries and then regrettably in India, because we always have idiots in our country who want to follow everything that's happening abroad. Abhijit, I want to talk to you about the second big area which is being weaponized by creating false narrative, that is history, and how history has been used to further the woke agenda.
History is something which is very, very powerfully weaponized. In the US, they have said that America is all about racism. There is no other identity to America but racism. So now racism has been a problem in America. Nobody can deny that. But you can't say that that is the only identity that the US has. So if you look at slavery, for example, more slaves were taken to Arabian countries than were taken to the United States. But nobody talks about slavery in Arabian countries, right? But the stamp of slavery and racism has been fixed so strongly on the United States that in history, they say that they have created something which is called as 1619 project. So normally we say that America was formed in 1776 when they got their independence from the British. But wokes have created something which is 1619 project, because in the year 1619, a batch of African slaves landed in the United States for the first time. So they say that 1619 is the year when the US was formed. Because racism is the only identity of US, and it started in 1619. So 1619 should be the year that should be taken as the year when the United States were formed. Same thing is now being done with India. India's only identity is casteism, exploitation, patriarchy. These are the words which are associated with India. And that is why dismantling global Hindutva is such a big program that they took in the United States, where all big universities were associated. Because they are associating India with casteism, patriarchy, exploitation, and other things. So they are giving you an identity which you simply can't shrug off, because it is given with so much conviction. There is a lady who has written a book, I forget her name. She has written a book which says that casteism in India is the origin of all exploitation in the world. Seriously. And it's a bestseller. And Oprah Winfrey has promoted that book very, very strongly. And it's a bestseller book in the United States. So they are associating, they are using history. I mean, we have been always targeted like that. The British also weaponized history and created RN invasion theory to demolish our self-confidence and self-respect. We have lived through that. But again, the same game is being played with us. When British started that, Oxford University played the important role of giving it a research and ideology foundation. And now in this game of dominating India, Harvard University is playing a very big role of giving them the ideological shield from which they are launching a great attack on India by completely distorting our history. They are saying that India is nothing but patriarchy. India is nothing but exploitation. India is nothing but casteism and untouchability. So it's a very, very serious subject. And because they create a very, very strong ideological aura around whatever they say, it becomes very difficult. Another thing is, they draw a line of ethics. And they say that if you are on the wrong side of that, wrong meaning they decide what is right and wrong. And if you are on the wrong side of that line, then you can never be right. So, and again, as I said, that there is nothing like objective reality. So you can't argue. Once they declare that you are xenophobic, once they declare that you are Islamophobic, once they declare that you are patriarchal, you have no chance. So that is the foolproof kind of strategy that they have prepared. And earlier we realize and start fighting it, it is better.
Thank you so much. There was a very, very interesting debate. Now I open the floor for questions. Because of lack of time, I'll be able to take 2 or 3 questions, but just ask questions. Please don't make observations.
That was an absolutely fascinating discussion, the three of you. It is absolutely brilliant. Couple of very quick questions to Abhijit ji. You know, when you say, and I completely identified with you when you said that you cannot argue with commies and leftists because I am from JNU, is absolutely self-defeating. And then at the same time you also say India has to make sure that we defeat them. Isn't that a contradiction? Because if you cannot argue with people, they will not listen to reason and rationale. How the hell do you defeat them? The only solution, and I'm just putting it for, is to use the Hindi proverb, loha hi lohe ko kaatta hai. If left demands complete submission and any deviation is completely prohibited, it works for the global community, leftist community, then dare I say there is a religion that also demands complete submission. It also works for only the global religious people in the fold. So why isn't that people of that religious fold fighting the left? It is Loha versus Loha. Where do we come in? We can just step aside and watch the fun. That's number one. And to Dr. Saab, while I do agree with your thesis very quickly about the rationalist murder, because that was also part of that, I mean, you can say it that I'm being a devil's advocate, but for wrong people or people who did not commit the crime to be tortured and to be wrongly accused of this, all the intelligence agencies are with the present BJP government for the last 9 years. So you can no longer accuse the Congress or the NCP or erstwhile governments of committing this, absolute monstrosity. So what do you have to say to, the present government not disentangling the mess that these 4 murders have got themselves into? And is that, doesn't the blame also rest on that? And finally, I agree with your daughter, not you, because I believe while gender may be fluid, sex is not. In fact, that was one of the debates where the Chief Justice also got it wrong when he said there is no such thing as biological male or female. He was absolutely wrong. So people can identify themselves as cat, mouse, rat, whatever they wish to, but biologically they are either male or female. Thank you.
So this is very interesting actually as to why the authorities stayed how they were. And all this stems from the judge who actually asked for the case and took it, okay, Justice Dharmadhikari. And this particular justice ideally should not have even touched this case because his father was a very close associate of Dabholkar. He was the senior Justice Dharmadhikari. So having a personal interest, normally you would have to recuse yourself from the case. But in this case, he has taken the matter out of turn and kept it with him. And he has given orders not to transfer any officers connected with the case. And that is how that position stayed till the time the judge retired. And the court continued to monitor this investigation with the same parameters right up to 2023 January when the trial had already begun. So normally a court-monitored investigation should end when the charge sheet is filed, which should have been ideally, one charge sheet was already filed in 2015, so it should have technically ended at that time. It didn't. It should have ended in 2017 when the second charge sheet was filed. It didn't. And the Dabholkar family themselves kept fighting in court, saying that we want to continue the court monitoring of the investigation. And even after the trial had begun, they kept pleading with the court the same thing in the Supreme Court. And the reason for this is because of application of pressure, nothing else. It was just a pressure tactic. And because keep doing this, they will keep making allegations that the investigation is not, and in fact they did throughout, that these investigations have not been done properly and the real culprits have not been caught. And till date, the family maintains the real culprits have not been caught, by the way. So, this is how it has gone. Now, as to why the present government didn't do anything about it, I don't think they will. I don't have any such expectations from them that they are going to change the officers concerned or touch the investigation in any manner. And they have their own reasons not to also. They still haven't done anything about even the Malegaon cases. And I will go one step further to say that this is the last bit of the Hindu terror narrative which was remaining. Because there were actually efforts to make linkage between the Malegaon accused and the accused in these 4 cases, which eventually they had to accept that there's simply no linkage involved in this. So that is wahan pe. Now, yes, gender fluidity is a nonsense. You can identify yourself as anything you want, cat, dog, elephant, whatever. But yes, but that doesn't change your reality as to what you are. And, you may undergo a surgery to get a sex change operation done. It still doesn't change your biologics. So that doesn't change. Now, if you have an issue, yeah, you can seek counseling, you can seek professional help. You can do what you want to yourself, but as a governmental policy, it is not acceptable for you to allow minors to take such decisions. That is absolutely out. If some adult of, the Piramal who did a sex change operation after he was 30, I'm fine with that, it's your choice. 30-year-old is good enough to understand, but to allow children and preteens and, teenagers to do this, no, that can't be done.
One small subset question. If you are saying that adults can get that thing, in a sense, mutilate themselves, but children should not, then why do we allow male circumcision of children?
We do it only for medical reasons. So actually, that is one of my bread and butter surgeries. So I would request you not to kick my stomach.
Anand, do you think any one of us is Asaduddin Owaisi or something?
So coming to your first question, yeah, certainly Hinduism is in fact the most tolerant and inclusive religion. So for transgenders also we have something called as kinnar. So we accept them as a part of the society. And whereas in Islam, transgenderism means death. So still the reason behind that is they have identified Islam as oppressed. So they want to create more and more oppressed classes. For them Islam is an oppressed class. And oppressed can never be wrong. Oppressors can never be right. Oppressed can never be wrong. So that's why Hamas gets justified. Because they are oppressed. And oppressed can never be wrong. So that is the issue. Another thing is, there are 3 major streams who want totalitarian control over the world. One is extremely rich families and banks. Second is left. And third is Islam. And all of them think that they are using each other. So left thinks that they are using Islam. And that's why they never go against them. Because their idea is to destroy the world. Anarchy and destruction is what they want. And no better partner than Islam to achieve anarchy and destruction. So that is why that yuti is there, Islam and left. But in Iran, what happened, we all know that initially the movement against Shah was started by the left. But they were not going anywhere. So they thought that we'll use Khomeini because he was popular among the rural youth. So they thought that we'll use him. But once the movement was successful, the left were the first ones who were shot, and it became an Islamic republic. So it's anybody's guess what is going to happen ultimately.
I'll have to wrap up now because after this we have a very, very important and engrossing session by Vishnu Shankar Jainji. Both Abhijit and Amit will be available. There'll be a tea break. Please feel free to meet them. Please buy the book, take their autographs, and ask them whatever questions that you might have. Unfortunately, since we are already 10 minutes above the stipulated time limit, I'll have to wrap up here. Thank you for being such a lovely audience.
I call upon Mrs. Sapna Ajay Bharathan, President, Regional CRPF Families Welfare Association, Coimbatore, and wife of IGP CRPF, Coimbatore, to felicitate Srimati Shefali Vaidya. Can we also have Paramashivan ji to felicitate Abhijit Joag ji?